Rainbow Reflections, Book 1, A Kind of Magic, Chapter 7, As It Began. Good morning! Zin poked her head out of her room, throwing her arms out on either side of her. She was dressed in a bright blue robe with dark blue birds scattered across its smooth surface. Underneath the robe, she wore a green and blue striped shirt and black pants with green stripes down the back. "It's the first day of school!" Zin called, her voice echoing off the stone walls of the tower. "Wake up and get ready for a great day!" "Why can't you let us sleep?" Sorala's annoyed voice screamed down to her. "It's the crack of dawn." "It's only 7, Zin replied loudly. "Or almost 7. "I don't care what time it is," Sorala growled in return. "No, kids, stop your howling," came a gruff voice one level down. It was Ren pretending to be Hyaktu. "Let people sleep if they want to." Zin snorted in laughter. "Oh, come on, Ren. Let me have some fun. It's not like Dad's here to actually scold me after all." Ren bounded up the stairs, appearing around the turn with a grin on her face and dressed in a simple pink robe. "Yeah, I know, Zin, but I just couldn't resist," she teased. "Not that Dad sounds like that anyway." "Yeah, if anything, he'd get in on the joke." Zin looked at the stairs spiraling up towards Sorala's room and yelled as loudly as she could, "Come on, sleepyhead!" Ugh! Zin and Ren walked down the steps to the first floor. Ren went to sit down on the rug in front of the empty fireplace, while Zin jumped onto the couch behind her. "I can't wait for class," Zin said, fidgeting excitedly. "I can see that," Ren chuckled, closing her eyes. "Do you mind keeping it down, though? I want to meditate for at least 5 minutes. Zin shrugged quietly in response and hopped off the couch again, placing one hand on her hip as she scanned the tower room in a bored fashion. Sniffing the air, she could detect a trace of something fruity. It seemed Hyaktu had eaten breakfast in the tower that morning. A bit later, Sorala came dragging her feet down the stairs. She was dressed in a new yellow robe, one that Ren had seldom worn before. She would have appeared nice in the new outfit if it wasn't for the annoyed look on her face and the dark marks under her golden eyes. Maybe I shouldn't have woken her up. Yeah, what am I thinking? Of course I had to wake her up, otherwise she'd miss breakfast. The bell will sound any minute now anyway. "What's the first class again?" Sorala grumbled. Zin put her pointer finger to her lips, then pointed at Ren over the couch with her other hand. Sorala scowled and crossed her arms, leaning against the entranceway to the stairs. "Why can't she just do that in her room?" Sorala whispered. "Because she wants to do it near the fireplace," Zin mouthed to her. "Why?" Sorala hissed. Zin thought about that for a moment. "Why is she doing it by the fireplace?" "I don't know," she whispered back honestly. "You two are ridiculous," Sorala muttered loudly. "I heard that," Ren said, opening one eye and looking back at Sorala. She smiled playfully at the other girl, then hopped to her feet. "Well, that'll have to do. I lost concentration when you two had your hissing match. Let's see what's for breakfast." The three therefore left the tower, Zin digging around in her pockets for the tower key. She'd keep spare keys in most of her robes. Once finding it, she locked the door and hurried after Ren and Sorala as the two walked on without her. They crossed the Tai Chi studio and courtyard until they reached the eating hall. There weren't too many students at breakfast just yet, as the bell had just rung. The three made their way through the many wooden tables to reach the food counter near the kitchen door. The usual aromas of savory and sweet filled the air, but this time the smells didn't bother Zin. The cooks always made a variety of good food. There were blueberry muffins, cinnamon rolls, plain and chocolate chip pancakes, peanut spread toast, fruit bowls, cereal, teas and blends of multiple flavors, hot cocoa, and plain water. "Do you ever wonder how the cooks have time to make all this food?" Zin asked Ren, grabbing 3 bamboo trays from the clean stack on one side of the counter. Ren took a tray from Zin and replied, "Well, there are 6 of them." She led the way, sliding her tray down the scratched-up counter and reaching for some pancakes. "Do you think they use magic to make it go by faster?" Zin wondered. "I would, if I knew how," Sorala commented. Zin collected food unconsciously, thinking back to a time that she and Ren had been cooking with their father. The family had been traveling, as was usual in the good old days, and they were low on food supplies. They only had flour, a few spices, some mangoes, and a handful of blueberries. Instead of eating the fruit by itself, the twins voted on making a mango blueberry bread. Hyaktu had used his air magic to make the bread rise, and Zin recalled how she had wanted to do magical cooking for at least a month afterwards. Smiling at the memory, Zin trailed Ren and Sarala to a nearby table and sat down to eat. But it tasted nowhere near as savory or sweet as the mango blueberry bread she'd made with her family. As they ate, more people trickled in until the eating hall was completely full. Chatter filled the air again, pulling Zin from different memories of the places the Saihan family had traveled to before the school's creation. She scowled at the annoying people, then realized that she had finished eating while she'd been reminiscing. Standing up, she placed her pointed shoe on the bench. "Hey Ren, do you think we will ever travel again?" "Of course we will," Ren said, raising an eyebrow in question and appearing much like their father. "We go on vacations every summer." "Yeah, but I mean traveling like we used to do, just going around the world and never being tied down or only staying at the little house for a few months before traveling again," Zin explained, tripping over her words as she spoke rapidly. "Oh, well, it's hard to do that when Dad owns a school," pointed out Ren. Zin's shoulders slumped. "Yeah, I guess that's true. How much time do we have left anyway?" School just started, so it'll be another year before we can go I meant until class starts," Zin interrupted. Ren pulled out the squarish family mirror and said, "It's 7:35. What should we do to kill time?" "I would have slept if given the choice," Sarala muttered, glaring up at Zin. Zin raised an eyebrow at her. "Sleep is for the weak," she finally said in an uninterested voice. In the end, Zin pulled out a deck of Yut cards from her robe. She played with Ren until Sarala was done eating and surprisingly joined in too. The card game was fun, especially when Zin constantly made Sarala pick up cards. They were so invested in their game that the chatter faded around them and they almost missed the ringing bell. "Ah, that's the minute bell," Ren cried. "We better go." "I don't have my wand though," Sarala said, her voice slightly panicked. "Hurry up," Zin yowled. The three raced out of the eating hall, each of them heading for the western building containing their tower. "I'll get our wands," Ren shouted over her shoulder. "You get to class, okay?" Zin nodded and changed directions, heading for the Magic Studies classroom instead. Sarala followed her as Ren vanished into the Tai Chi studio. Zin and Sarala sat down at the front of the class, saving a seat for Ren. Khurshid stood at the large desk, waiting for the students to gather. The final bell rang, and Ren appeared soon after, panting heavily. She sunk into the seat beside Zin, passing Zin and Sarala their wands and a stack of notebooks.
"Welcome, class,"
Khurshid began.
"You will be in this classroom for the next 2 hours for magic studies and magic channeling. Next week, magic channeling will be in the room over. You will report to the greenhouse for plants and then to the potions classroom. In the afternoon, you'll go to the Kung Fu studio for Kung Fu, and those of you who are taking Tai Chi will go to the Tai Chi studio. I'm going to have my mirror call out your names for attendance to make sure we've got everyone here for the first day. Please say here when you hear your name."
He pulled out his mirror and ordered it to read out the attendance. It called out their names in a bland voice, its surface lighting up each time it spoke. Everyone was there, so he put the mirror away to start class.
In Magic Studies, we will be going over the types of magic and how to determine a person's magic. In Magic Channeling, we will be going over common uses for magic and why we use objects for channeling. We won't be doing any actual channeling until next week. Now, I am blind, but that doesn't mean you can't ask questions. Just knock on the desk to get my attention. If I seemed not to have noticed, you may interrupt, but only if your question is important, please. Any questions so far?
Nobody moved, as if afraid any small movement or sound would catch Khurshid's attention.
Very well, let's begin. If you'd like to take notes, you can do so. I don't mind if you use your mirror or your notebooks, just so long as you're paying attention.
Khurshid paced slowly at the front of the class as he lectured them about the different types of magic. There is elemental magic, which everyone knew of, natural magic, enchantment magic, and spirit magic. Elemental magic was what every living animal had in them and was said to be the source of life itself. The elements consisted of earth, water, fire, and air. People typically channeled their magic through an object like a wand, as only plants could channel magic, but could also use actions, like martial arts or dancing, to control it. Natural magic was found in nature, specifically plants and crystals. This magic could be used to help a person's own magic be more powerful, especially when added to potions, heal body or mind, and more. Khurshid didn't spend much time on enchantment or spirit magics, saying they'd learn more about those types of magics at the higher levels. Enchantment magic made objects do certain things, while spirit magic was said to be that of imagination. Zin wished Khurshid would go into the magic types more, as Hyaktu didn't even tell his children much about them, despite using advanced magic often. The rest of the class was spent looking up astrological birth charts in textbooks. After all, the placement of the sun and moon in somebody's chart determined their type of magic. If someone was born during the day, their sun sign would determine their magic. If born at night, it would be their moon sign. If a person was born at dawn or dusk, it could swing either way. Studying birth charts took a lot of concentration that the class was quickly over before the students realized it. Khurshid assigned them homework to figure out their personal birth charts, which would be due the following week. Zin groaned at the idea of receiving homework already, but at least Khurshid told them that they were allowed to use the AirNet for pointers. In magic channeling, Khurshid briefly explained that objects helped a person channel their magic. People used plant magic through wands to help their own magic come out and be stronger than if they were trying to channel on their own. Zin hoped that this would mean she'd be able to summon her magic when it came to using a wand, but Khurshid strictly told each student not to try practicing any magic until the following week, so Zin would still have to wait. Once a person mastered using their wand or other wooden object like a staff or stick, they moved on to using their entire bodies to summon their magic. The most advanced wielders got away with using only their hands. C3 asked so many questions in this class that they had little time to go over how magic could be used on a day-to-day basis. As a result, they were assigned homework of how to use each element in 2 daily tasks. After magic channeling, the first years hurried to the opposite side of the courtyard where the greenhouse was located, glad to be out of the stuffy room and stretching their legs. They had to walk through the thick garden to reach the glass doors concealed behind it, shoving pokey branches and slick leaves aside. The greenhouse wasn't connected to the western building due to being made entirely of thick paneled glass instead of stone. It stood 4 floors high to house the many plants comfortably. This meant that there were less student rooms in the western building than the northern and eastern buildings, due to the greenhouse taking up a large chunk of space. The glass building was more cluttered than the gardens. There were all sorts of plants, from trees and shrubs to pulsing bushes and dancing vines. There was even a large pile of sticky pink and green goo. The glass windows at the top of the greenhouse were open, allowing birds and many insects inside. Between the birds, bugs, and bushes making a racket, it was difficult to hear the teacher, Fern Oakley. Fern was a tall woman with a bushy green afro. Her right eye was purple, and her left eye was red, but it was the green vine-like tattoos covering her body that caught everyone's attention. She wore a spiral necklace over her plaid shirt. Zin never saw her without it. Her face always looked chiseled to be a stern expression. Most of the class was spent studying a few of the most common plants and what magical properties they had. Fern had them taking extensive notes. The students not only had to write down how to detect the plant by their 4 or 5 senses, but also sketch them to the best of their abilities. The class once again flew by with the notes and sketching. Soon enough, they were leaving the humid greenhouse and crossing the courtyard to return to the eastern building, where the potions classroom lay. Fern was teaching this class too, and she spent most of the time lecturing them on potion safety. Many of the students had fallen asleep, worn out after getting so much information in one morning. After C3 asked plenty of questions, Fern let the class go early for lunch, thankfully not assigning any homework. "Finally!" Zin yowled as she raced across the courtyard. Ren snorted in amusement. "I thought you couldn't wait for classes." "Yeah, and it was fun until potions, and now I'm hungry," Zin huffed. "It wasn't as bad as I thought it'd be," Sarala said, coming up behind them. but then again, I haven't been in school since the 4th grade, I think. Zin and Ren stared at her. Sarala blushed and pushed past them, reaching the eating hall first. The room was packed when they got inside. Sarala had paused in the doorway, clearly taken aback by how full the room was when she didn't get there early. She muttered that she'd save a spot for her, Zin, and Ren as long as they brought her food. Zin and Ren therefore went to the long line at the counter. Lunch had more of a selection than breakfast did. There were falafel wraps, bean burritos, veggie and fruit salads alike, soups of different savory flavors, dumplings, spicy noodles, rice, mashed potatoes, crispy cauliflower with sauce, apples and peanut spread, grilled fruit, sweet acai bowls, and even fruit tarts. A few snacks were available, from salty pretzels and crackers to healthier carrots and sunflower seeds. More drinks were added to the variety of teas and blends from that morning, too. Fresh smoothies and fruit juices. There were even popsicles and pie slices at the ready for dessert. Once the line finally moved, the two collected food on their trays. They got a third tray for Sarala, selecting random foods to add to it. "She eats bread with everything, I've noticed," Ren said, grabbing a fluffy roll. "Does she like spicy stuff?" Zin asked, tossing on a burrito. "Ooh, let's give her a popsicle," Ren exclaimed, snatching one from the counter. "Yeah, maybe that'll teach her to chill out a bit." They grabbed 3 different smoothies, then looked around for Sarala. She was sitting at a table near the start of the line, reserving 2 seats at the benches by sticking her arms on one and her feet on the other. She sneered at anyone even looking at her. Zin and Ren made their way over to her, chuckling at the sight. "Here's some food," Zin said, setting down the third tray in front of her. She eyed the bread, burrito, and popsicle. "How very kind of you," she murmured. "Want to go outside?" Zin asked. "It's pretty warm and loud in here." "But I had to jump at this table before someone else took it," Sarala complained. However, the trio went outside, entering the garden to the left. Ren, who loved spending time in the gardens, knew exactly where a bench lay hidden within the tangle of plants. The bench sat beneath a willow tree, which provided shade from the bright sun above. It was only big enough for 2 people to sit on, though, so Zin sat on the soft grass. They ate in silence for a while, then discussed their classes and wondered what they could expect for Kung Fu. Getting food and eating took a while, that they did not have time to get any sort of head start on the homework they'd been assigned. They instead walked to the Kung Fu studio in the northern building, determined to arrive on time to their next class. They entered the building to see it wasn't empty. Hyaktu and C3 stood off to the side, on the small bit of ground that wasn't covered in orange mats. C3 seemed to be asking Hyaktu more questions.
"I was wondering, why are humans able to eat plenty of different foods? In the few documentaries we've gotten on wildlife, it appears that other animals merely eat 1 or 2 things. Like elephants have only been seen to eat grass and a bit of fruit. But humans eat a variety of things, from fruits and vegetables to grains and beans. I suppose a bean can count as a vegetable, but I mean to say, why don't wild animals eat as many foods as we do? I am talking about herbivorous animals, of course, as we aren't carnivores or omnivores. Aren't these herbivores missing out on nutrition? Or are we just eating lots of food simply due to our cultivation of plants? Do we need to eat that much food? Are there side effects of having too much nutrition?"
Hyaktu looked over at Zin, Ren, and Sarala as they entered. He smiled at them in a bemused fashion, then replied to C3. "We don't know much about animals, considering they tend to keep to themselves. We cannot come to any conclusions as to what sort of nutrition they might need, or how much nutrition they're gaining from the food they eat. But I admire your inquisitive mind, C3. Welcome, you 3. Excited for class, then? I hope you didn't eat too late, or too much," Hyaktu continued, rushing over to them. "Glad you came in," he added to Zin and Ren telepathically. The sisters glanced at each other and chuckled softly. The minute bell soon rang, bringing the other first-year students with it. Once the final bell rang and everyone was in, Hyaktu began the class. Some of you are probably wondering why you have to learn Kung Fu. Yes, there's the defense mechanism of magic, and Kung Fu teaches self-defense. But there is so much more to it than that. Kung Fu will get your body stronger and conditioned to handle magic. And when it comes time to channel magic with your body, martial arts will give you a stronger connection to it, making magic easier to channel. Of course, exercise is also very important, so this is our version of physical education that you'd find at other schools. Now, Kung Fu classes, and Tai Chi for that matter, work in a different way from the other classes. You advance depending on your rank. What we term as Kung Fu 1, or the first year Kung Fu class, is actually for the white, yellow, and green sashes. Kung Fu 2 is blue and purple sashes. Kung Fu 3 is brown and black sashes, and where a bit of magic comes in. Kung Fu 4 is focused entirely on magic. In order to move up in rank, you will each have to test. If you move more quickly than the other students, you could find yourself switching to the Kung Fu 2 class, which takes place on Triz Day. Not many students advance that quickly within a year, though. If you don't advance as fast as the others, that is totally fine. The average student should test for Blue Sash by the very end of the year, so they can start next year in the Kung Fu 2 class. You will need to change out of your normal clothes and into the proper uniform. Hyaktu flicked his hand and caught a white vest, baggy black pants, and a white sash that appeared out of thin air. The vest had a small black and white symbol on the front left and a large one on the back, just like Hyaktu's robe. I'd like you to get dressed in this before class starts so we can jump right into it. Any questions? There weren't, so he got right to work once they had all changed. Hyaktu had them practicing blocks and basic strikes for a good chunk of the class. These were mostly done in the air until Hyaktu came around with a blocker bat or target for them to strike. They had to call out different sounds with each move, making their breath come out sharp and aggressive. The remainder of the class was spent drilling a few of the basic kicks, though they didn't have time to get through all of them. I thought we were supposed to be learning self-defense, Sorella muttered once the Kung Fu class was over. We are, Hyaktu said, hearing her. The first 2 classes will be focused on learning basic strikes and kicks, then we'll be making techniques out of them. And as I said at the beginning of the class, we'll split into groups according to rank. Mr. Jihan will be helping me out and teaching you once we have 2 different ranks here. They then moved on to the next Kung Fu class, which was Kung Fu 1B on the schedule. The second Kung Fu and Tai Chi classes are the combative classes. For Kung Fu 1, we will only be doing kickboxing and grappling. Weapon sparring comes at Kung Fu 2. We will work on kickboxing 1 week, grappling the next, and alternate. Kickboxing is exactly what it sounds like, kicking and boxing combined. Grappling is all about ground fighting. We won't be holding matches anytime soon, but I still want you to get dressed up in the kickboxing gear. He opened a door to one of the small rooms on the left side of the large mat, which led to a closet. The other 2 doors were personal training rooms. Hyaktu pulled out bags of gear, which included helmets, gloves, chest protectors, shin guards, and groin protectors. The sturdy material was made from rough plants. As everyone put the gear on over their uniforms, Hyaktu explained the rules of kickboxing, with the most important one being that they were only allowed to strike to the chest protector. Once everyone was dressed, Hyaktu had them pair up to practice simple drills. They started off with jab cross back and forth, and how to block the 2 punches. They then did the same drill with swinging hooks to either side of the body. Finally, they learned how to do straight snap kicks off either leg, and the different ways to block kicks. The students were exhausted and sweaty by the time class was finished. Zin was starting to wish she hadn't signed up for Tai Chi. She watched jealously as the class cleared out after taking off their gear and wiping it down, done for the day. We still have 2 hours, Zin said to Ren telepathically. Don't worry, Zin. Tai Chi is perfect to do after a Kung Fu warm-up, Ren replied. And then we can stretch after. It'll be so nice.
Tai Chi class to the Tai Chi studio,
Hyaktu called, waving for the students to follow him outside the Kung Fu studio. He led the way to the familiar Tai Chi studio, which often stood empty. Zin and Ren trailed right behind him, chatting about the fun Kung Fu classes as they went. They knew Sarala wasn't doing Tai Chi, but when they got into the studio, they were quite surprised to see that nobody else had signed up. Zin and Ren stared around, as if another student would appear out of thin air like the Kung Fu uniform Hyaktu had summoned. Hyaktu nodded sadly. Not many people are interested in Tai Chi. At least, not many people your age. Plenty of elderly people find Tai Chi beneficial to their old joints, but kids hardly like the sound of moving slowly and calming down. Geez, if I didn't sign up, you'd be alone, Ren. Ren glanced sidelong at Zin, but made no response. She instead said to Hyaktu, Well, I know what kind of benefits Tai Chi gives, from better stability, to a tranquil mind, to stronger joints. There's just so many benefits. All of those other students are missing out. Just then, the door opened and C3 came in. He stared at the mostly empty room. The Tai Chi studio was a bit smaller than the Kung Fu studio, only holding a large mat and no personal training rooms. There wasn't any equipment either, as any equipment for Tai Chi would be stored in the Kung Fu closet. C3 blinked in surprise, then cleared his throat.
I apologize for my tardiness,
He said awkwardly.
I had to use the bathroom.
Hyaktu smiled. You are more than welcome here. I thought I had more than my own children. Now, as I said in Kung Fu, Tai Chi ranks and tests work the same way. The uniform is a white top with sleeves and a white fringe instead of a sash. Rather than learning techniques, you will be learning a form of self-defense movements. We have forms in Kung Fu, which are a series of techniques linked together, so it's pretty similar. But in Tai Chi, you have to move slow and low. It's a very intricate art, as you will soon see through empty full movements and using the body instead of the arms or legs. They spent the Tai Chi hour learning the stances and the beginning of the form. At the very end, they did a bit of Qigong exercises to cool down. There were many types of Qigong, which targeted different areas of the body, but always focused on controlling the breath. Qigong was said to have great healing qualities like Tai Chi. The second Tai Chi class was all about the combative push hands. Since there were only 3 students, Hyaktu got to jump in the mix to drill with them. Push hands was all about feeling the opponent's energy and redirecting or deflecting their attacks. Zin found it very difficult, more so than Tai Chi's slow movements. It was restraining in that they had to stand in place, and if they lifted their foot and stumbled back, they automatically lost the point. Once class was over, the bell rang for dinner. Zin, Ren, and C3 were bone weary at this point, and they were slow to get changed back into their normal clothing. By the time the trio reached the eating hall, there was a long line again. Look, there's Sarala, Zin said, pointing. Sarala was at the head of the line. Zin led the way over to her, ignoring C3's complaints behind her that the sisters were cutting. How was Tai Chi? Sarala asked as they approached. Zin grunted with a shrug. It's way harder than it looks. It's fun, though, Ren said, her purple eyes lighting up as she grabbed an acai bowl. I was trying to work on that astrology homework, Sarala muttered, but I didn't get very far. We still have a week, Zin pointed out, snatching a bean patty sandwich. I know, but... She shrugged and fell silent. Zin frowned, then asked Sarala, where did he go if not back to the tower? After all, you don't have the key, though we easily could have opened the door for you if you came with us. I didn't want to get stuck going to Tai Chi, Sarala said, adding a bread roll to her tray. Zin snorted in laughter. Wow, you really don't want to take it, do you? She made a small grunty noise in reply. The 3 finished grabbing their food and went to sit down at a table by the door. They ate and chatted about their first day of classes for a while, then decided to do homework together the following day. After eating, they went back to the tower. I'm glad to see you opening up, Sarala, Ren said as they stopped outside the tower door to unlock it. Sarala stared at the ground and made no reply. Once the door opened, she hurried inside and went up the stairs. Zin and Ren remained by the door, frowning after her. I think you scared her off, Zin noted dryly. Ren looked concerned. Did I say something wrong? Zin shrugged. I don't know. Well, I'm tired. I think I'm going to bed. Do you think we could try to summon my magic tomorrow? The door opened behind them and Hyaktu came in. Zin immediately tensed. Did her father hear her? Did he now know that Zin still had yet to summon her magic? Oh, you just want to jump right into learning magic, don't you? Hyaktu chuckled. I'm afraid you'll have to follow the rules, just like every other student. No magic outside class for the first month. Zin chuckled, acting like she wasn't on high alert. Sorry, Dad, I'm just so excited to learn. Hyaktu ruffled her hair, making it lose some of its spiky look. I'm very happy to hear, he said proudly. Zin pushed Hyaktu's hand away. I'm going to bed now. See you tomorrow. She bounded to the spiral staircase before Hyaktu or Ren could reply. She soon slipped inside her room and closed the door quietly behind her, her heart racing. She went over to the hammock in the center of the room and collapsed on it, her mind and body too weary to think or move. Her room used to have a bed in it until one of the students broke their bed. Zin offered to give up her bed to the student and instead got a hammock. She still didn't know why her father allowed this, considering there were many empty rooms with extra beds. When Zin didn't feel like sleeping in the hammock, she would simply lay on a blanket on the floor. She didn't care much where she slept. Her room was painted orange. There are lots of posters across the walls depicting different regions of the world. Galia's thick rainforest, sandy deserts of Sindarayib, a volcano in Melima Watai, palm trees in Lua Pali, tall peaks in Fuanhan Shen, a mountain range with a brilliant sunset in Akash Parat. Above the wardrobe was a large board with photos of the Saihan family in different locations. The beach, a water park, a thick jungle, tall mountains, even a huge bowling competition. Zin often woke up to the sight of adventurous memories. There were a few shelves around the room. Some held sticks and stones, while others had enchanted souvenirs from around the world. Books sat on one shelf, most of them full of fantasy adventures. Adventures that Zin missed taking. Zin focused on the posters, paintings, souvenirs, and books, trying to calm down or focus on memories of traveling. Dad doesn't know. Dad doesn't know. She repeated the phrases in her head, reassuring herself until she fell into a dreamless sleep.